The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I do not
Right.
have gameplay for this, unfortunately.
That's fine. We'll
But I
dock
will say
your
if
pay for the
if
next
you
episode. It's
yeah, if you haven't listened to it, I did touch on, I gave some early impressions a couple of episodes ago. But to recap, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is Zelda's very, like, it's a weird thing to think that after all these decades, the Princess Zelda is finally the main character in her own game. And this is the Zelda games that are, classic Zelda, not Breath of the Wild. This is the classic Zelda, very much akin to, there's a remake they did, A Link to the Past.
Link's Awakening.
A Link's Awakening, sorry. Where it is that sort of super shiny, toy-like visual style. With
the diorama
the
style
diorama,
looks
that's
so
what I
good.
couldn't think.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're playing as Princess Zelda, but what's quite neat with this game is that the gameplay trick, let's say, it's kind of like a combination of, the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and classic Zeldas, in that you've still got that top-down 2D exploration, doing dungeons, whatever, but Zelda has a staff which lets her sort of learn things in her environment and then summon them at a whim. So that could be anything from a table to a trampoline to enemies that you overcome that you can then summon to help you fight other enemies. And it makes for some very interesting gameplay moments where, there's some light puzzle elements in this game, or some very specific puzzle elements, and you need to figure out how to use your items to, for example, get up to a ledge. Is it a matter of, stacking 3 beds on each other, or putting 2 beds and then a trampoline on the end, whatever? It's got a very interesting and, like, I think a very unique gameplay loop for, a Zelda game. And I'm always amazed that despite this franchise being this old, the team still figures out new ways to make it feel fresh. And yeah, I think it just surprised me that it's this modern day retro Zelda game with these new elements, and it's just really good. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It took me 20 to 25 hours to finish, and it's structured similarly in that, you've got main sort of dungeons to go do, but again, it follows that Tears of the Kingdom / Breath of the Wild thing, where you don't have to necessarily do them in a specific order. The map's pretty open to you, and the way the game starts, it'll tell you to go to one of 2 places, but once you've ticked off those 2 places in any order you want, there are another 3 places to go do, and again, you can do them in any order you want. And it touches on the typical biomes you'd expect from a game like this. So you deal with the Goron, in their volcano, fiery hot land, to some wetlands, to, snow-capped peaks. So it ticks all those boxes, but just navigating the game as Zelda, where you're not Link, that you can just outright use your sword to your bow or your bombs to kill enemies. It's just fresh from that point of view. That said, Zelda does have the ability to channel Link's abilities for a limited amount of time, which comes in handy for, some of the more stickier combat situations or bosses, where you can turn into kind of like a spirit or a version of Link, which lets you, use his sword, his bow, and eventually his bombs as well when you unlock it. But yeah, I think this game just surprised me, and that's, like I said, I'm always just amazed how this team manages to find innovative ways to keep this franchise just fresh. And it's funny because I know it's not like the sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, God knows what that's going to look like. But it's funny that it's like they wanted to do a retro Zelda, but they still took elements from that in terms of, experimenting with the free-form way of players getting through puzzles or through certain areas. And I think Jeff mentioned this because he's also played it and finished it. By the end, you can cheese a lot of the stuff because you learn so many things in this game. You can learn, like, every enemy you defeat, you can summon, and then you'll be surprised.
That's wild.
Yeah, you'll be surprised the number of items you can duplicate and use in the real world. I think when you have access to all of them, it's a bit like, it's less thinking and just doing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a game I really want to get back to. I've only played a small amount of it, but I could already see the sort of building blocks of the emergent gameplay from there, like figuring out puzzles in your own ways and, yeah, I guess I can see how it might snowball out of control in terms of the options you have available to you, and then I guess as a result of that, being able to use the same basic solution for most of the puzzles. But yeah, I still want to get back to it. I think it's cool that they get to experiment in these smaller games that are also at the same time more traditional Zelda experiences that some people have been really looking forward to, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are entirely different games in my opinion to the rest of the Zelda franchise, and some people don't gel with them as much. So yeah, I do wonder what it might do for influencing the next Zelda, because like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild already had this sort of emergent gameplay. It was like you figuring out how to poke the world and what it would do in response to that. This was more just like a predefined way to mess with the world, but I still think the two could influence each other going forward.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
I'm the same as you. I have no idea what they do with the core Zelda franchise now, although I think it would be tough to see them go away from this formula that is sold so incredibly well. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see.
The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, Link's Awakening. Just have a baby.
I mean, yeah, that's a mouthful and a half. I'd be down. I feel like given this tech that they have with this diorama style thing, we have to be getting like a Link to the Past remake of some sort eventually. Surely.
I think this exactly that. It's kind of like a template that they'll build on and they'll remake. I think they'll spend many years remaking or even just taking inspiration from the old classic Zelda games.
Because like Link's Awakening was a very odd one to remake because it was like a Game Boy game.
Yeah, it was one of
I guess
the
the remake then
entries.
felt so different, to the original. But A Link to the Past is old now. It's a SNES game. Yeah, SNES game. And I think it would just work perfectly in this engine with the core gameplay loop it's got there is still like timeless. So I'd be first in line to play something like that. Yeah, definitely.
It's a good franchise.
Cool.
Yeah.
The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom.
We actually play Zelda. Actually, really good game. Would recommend. That's like what a nice game to see the Switch out.